Well, good afternoon, everyone. As they said, I'm Portia Roberson. I am the CEO of Focus Hope, and I thank you for being here this afternoon. I know it's a kind of drizzly day, and kids are getting back to school, so making time to come talk about this very important issue is so very important to us. I have the pleasure this morning of introducing, not really, one I'm going to introduce, the other one I don't get to introduce. I've introduced him before. I've also had the pleasure of working with the two of the three gentlemen that are on the panel today, working with or working for two of the three gentlemen that are on the panel today. And so Attorney General Holder, former Attorney General Holder, told me that I couldn't tell any of the stories. So I guess, I'll stick to that. We're here today because we need to talk about Census 2020. We need to talk about how it affects all of us. We need to talk about how important it is for all of us. Here at Focus Hope, everybody knows what we do here. We feed seniors $41,000 a month. We do early education for 250 families, children. We do youth development for our little bit of older kids. And most importantly, we do workforce training. And a lot of the money that we get to do that work is driven by the count in the census. And so I know during this time, a lot of people look at me and say, I'm not giving the government any information because we're living in kind of that twilight zone of, do I share information and how is it going to be used? But Focus Hope wants you to know that we are going to do everything we can in partnership with the city and with the state to make sure that people feel confident and comfortable in getting counted. Because not only is it vitally important to us here at Focus Hope, but it's vitally important to how funding is given to cities like Detroit, to states like Michigan. So I want you to know that we are an aggressive and active partner with the state and with the city in the census, with the county as well, Mr. County Exec. And I want to make sure that you know that you will be able to come to Focus Hope to make sure that you are counted, because it is that important. We don't want it to be lost this year. We know we've got an election coming up, and so you're going to hear a lot about voting, voting, voting. You also need to hear a lot about being counted, 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 okay? So with that, there he is. I thought you were up here, and I'm just flipping around. I'm like, I work with this guy, I work for that guy. So without further ado, our Wayne County Executive, Mr. Warren Evans.
Good afternoon, all of you. For those who don't know, Portia worked for the Justice Department for a while in the Obama administration. Most of you know, some of you don't. So they have a relationship that goes back, Eric Holder, who I'm going to introduce in just a little while. But the significance of the census this year just can't be overstated. And I'm so happy that Wayne United, which is Wayne County's Census 2020 team, along with Detroit's Census 2020 team, along with the support of Focus Hope, and clearly the National Redistricting Foundation, of which former Attorney General Eric Holder is the chairman, is a team that needs to be in place. We're getting in place at the right time. We're coordinating activities, and a whole lot of other organizations have got to get involved in this too. It's in Wayne County, which has 43 communities, the way we're working is Wayne United is handling the coordination as best we can with 42 of the communities, 42 of the 43 in Detroit. And Detroit is handling its own, but coordinating together. And clearly Focus Hope and the national efforts are critically important to getting this done. I mean, when I said I can't overstate it, you can't overstate it. I mean, at a bare minimum, every missed count is about $1,800 a year for the full 10 years of the census in revenue that we're not going to receive. And quite often, most of that revenue is needed most for those that we don't count. And so it's critically important in a number of ways, but it's also critically important, and I kind of want to drive home the importance of this is because of all of the efforts in the current administration to suppress the count, yeah, I said it, and to want an undercount. Credibility with people out there is at an all-time high in terms of what we have to reach out to do to get people to believe us and not be fearful of what may happen, what arguably could happen. if they're counted. I mean, the importance is we're going to protect our citizens, and our citizens need to be counted. In every city, state, municipality throughout the United States needs to have a strong count. The census is critically important, and the 2020 election is going to be critically important. And so we really do have to, you know, it's easy when an administration irritates you and makes you mad. That's part of their strategy, because when you get mad, sometimes you just get mad and vent and don't do anything. What we have to do is mobilize, let that negative activity make us work twice as hard to get the count and do what we need to do. Okay, that important? Now let me just take a second to introduce somebody that doesn't need an introduction. But in today's contrast of the world, as I see the Obamas on this side and Eric Holder on this side, there can't be a stronger sense of pride for me to know how people are supposed to behave, how people are supposed to act, how people are supposed to be concerned, contrasted with what we're seeing nationally now. So I'm very, very proud to introduce the first African American Attorney General for the United States. One of the longest serving, I think maybe the third longest serving, was that right? Longest serving Attorney General for the United States. And just a person who we all know believes in justice, believes in equity, believes in inclusion, and believes in speaking his mind when it's important that he do so. With great honor, please help me welcome the former U.S. Attorney General for the United States of America, Eric Holder.
Thank you. Good morning. Now, how many of you all are supposed to be in school today? I don't know, you know, who's cutting school? Are you in school yet? Okay, all right. I want to make sure we're not getting any problem with the Board of Education here. It is a privilege to be here in Detroit. It's great to be here with Portia. Now, people always say that Portia worked for me. If anybody knows Portia Roberson, they know I worked for Portia. I might have been the Attorney General, and you could look up the org chart, and I'd get the top and all that kind of stuff. Here, the reality was like, what do I do now, Portia? Can I do this, Portia? Eric, don't do that. Eric, stand over there. Eric, come to this meeting. Am I right? Yes, I'm totally right. She has did wonderful things in Washington, and continues to do great things here at this wonderful facility. I was here, I guess back in October, when we were in the process of trying to get that redistricting commission put in place, which we did so successfully. Congratulations to you all. Although I understand that some folks were opposed to that weren't particularly happy about it, and they're still in the process of trying to reverse that which 60% of the people in this state said they wanted to have happen. So I want to let you know that the partnership that we forged back in 2018 continues to exist, and to the extent that we can help you fighting back those people who want to go against the will of the people, you will have allies. And we are still going to be looking at and helping you in any way that we can to make sure that that commission, in fact, goes in place. And then the things that were also passed, I guess was Prop 3, with regard to all the voting enhancement things, that those actually go into effect. You know, the reality is that we think that the more people who vote, the better our democracy is. And I always wonder, what's the counter argument to that? You know, it's like, I'm just looking for fairness. I'm not here to advocate for Democrats as opposed to Republicans. I'm here to advocate for the American people. Let the people decide. You know? The people on the other side want to leave the system in place so that politicians are picking their voters as opposed to citizens choosing who their representatives are going to be, and that continues with regard to the census. They want to make sure that only certain people are counted. They want to, as the county executive said, they want to suppress the count in certain places so that they can, over the course of the next 10 years, and you got to remember this. This is a it's a process that'll take a few months, but it will have a decade-long impact. $900 billion in federal aid is doled out to the states on the basis of the census. It goes to infrastructure, education, healthcare. All of these things are decided by where the people are, the number of people, in addition to the number of representatives that you will have in the United States House of Representatives. Now, I've read an article that says that Michigan is in danger of losing a congressman. Now, one of the ways in which you counteract that is to make sure that everybody gets counted. And it seems to me that the census is really just a continuation of our whole struggle to make sure that people have the right to vote. It's all, they are totally connected. You know, if we have a great census, we will then have a greater ability to get more people to the polls to vote for representatives who will represent them. And it is not, that climate of fear is something that we have to be real about. It is in some ways almost understandable that certain people are not going to raise their hands and be counted. We have got to counter that fear, but more than just countering that fear and reassuring people, we have to put mechanisms in place so that we actually do protect people who will raise their hands and who this administration would try to hurt by raising their hands and being counted. This is not going to be an easy thing. You know, in the Obama administration, I thought we did a good job. And to be fair, President Bush left in place a mechanism that we enhanced so that we had a very good count in 10 years or so ago. This administration is, and even with what we did, we had an undercount. We had an undercount. We didn't count all the people of color in this country, and so we had estimates had to be done. We didn't count all of the poor folks in this country, as well as we tried to do. This administration, you try to think, all right, well, we want to do better than the prior administration. That's not the mindset of these folks. And if you want to get a sense of, that mindset, you look at what they tried to do by including on the census form that citizenship question. Now, that has not been asked on the long form of the census since 1950, right? Since 1950. But Jeff Sessions, and this is true, this is an absolutely true story, said that he needed to have the citizenship question on the census form so that he could be more effective in enforcing the Voting Rights Act. Now, wait a minute. If you want to look up hypocrisy, you will see a picture of Jeff Sessions with that statement in the dictionary. The notion that Jeff Sessions or that Barr or that Trump or this administration wants to do anything to support and enforce in a better way the Voting Rights Act is ridiculous. The aim of including that citizenship question on the census form was to discourage certain groups of people, and let's be very specific, people in the immigrant community, and let's get more specific than that, Hispanic folks, to keep them away from the count. The notion, the Constitution says that you're supposed to count all of the people in the United States. It doesn't say you're supposed to count the citizens in the United States. That's the language in our Constitution. Every 10 years, the federal government is supposed to count all the people in this country. And this notion of including a citizenship question was simply an attempt to suppress the count. Now, our organization and my law firm filed a lawsuit, one of 3 lawsuits. 3 judges all said, this is nonsense. There's no basis for the claims that you make. In fact, with the documents that we found in a lawsuit in North Carolina, we saw the real reason why they were trying to do it, and it was consistent with what I just said. They were trying to suppress the count. 3 judges, federal judges, said, we're not going to allow you to include that question on the census form. They tried. They said, all right, we got 3 judges against us. Let's figure out a way in which we can do it. Justice Department was working furiously to do it. And they ultimately said, you know what? Even we can't come up with a way in which we're going to do this. And so you had Wilbur Ross, you had Donald Trump, and you had Attorney General Barr out in the White House in the Rose Garden, and they basically kind of threw up their hands and said, we can't do it. Trump said, we'll come up with the information in other ways. And they will. They'll try to come up with it in other ways. Because here's the deal. What they want to do is gather that information. First, they want to suppress the count only the people who they want to have included. And then they want to use that restricted information to redistrict in a way that will favor the Republican Party. They want to use this count that is not fair, that is not consistent with our constitutional obligation to actually do an unfair redistricting in 2021. They're all connected, all connected. So again, we want to have fair redistricting. We want to have a fair distribution of federal assets. We want to make sure that Michigan doesn't lose that congressman, because they look and they say, well, where would we want to have, let's have that congressman in a state that we know is more reliably red, as opposed to one that is blue, purple, you all can't be purple. And I can't see any red next in 2020. That happened once, that's a one-time thing. We got to make sure that everybody's out there, everybody gets counted, and that everybody votes come 2020. That's the deal. So I'm here today to try to focus attention on this issue, to talk about the concerns that you all have, to make sure that you understand that there are people in place who are doing a really great job trying to ensure that the count is nothing more than fair. Think about that. Nothing more than fair. That's the thing. In this redistricting effort, we keep saying we're not here to lobby for Democrats. We're not here to gerrymander for Democrats. All we want to do is have a fair count. And I always wonder, so how do you argue against that, right? And so, Scott Walker and all of these people, former governor of Wisconsin, he's now formed up this counter-Republican organization that says that we have $250 million that Holder and Obama are trying to gerrymander for Democrats. I'm like, well, wait a minute. All we're saying is that we want it fair. Because here's the deal. We know that if it's fair, that progressives and Democrats will do just fine. We don't have to cheat. That's what they're trying to do. And we can, talk about gerrymandering. We can talk about an unfair census. They're trying to cheat. When people always ask me, well, can you explain this to me? Can you explain gerrymandering? Can you explain to me an unfair census? It comes down to cheating. Simply that, cheating, That little girl understands cheating, and we understand what cheating is all about. And that's the kind of thing that we have to stop. But the cheating has really significant consequences. Really significant consequences. $1,800, $1,400 per person over the course of 10 years. Think about that. Think about all that money could do. Think about the kinds of this kind of facility and how you could replicate it in other parts of the state in places that need it, with federal assistance, obviously with state assistance and with local support. These are the kinds of things that we have to ensure actually occur. And we have to make sure that people whose voices are often not heard are counted, and so that their voices can be heard. Because if you're not counted, you can be discounted. Not counted, you can be discounted, and your voice will not be heard. And policies will be put in place that are inconsistent with your best interest, actually inconsistent with the best interest of the American people. So, this is a one-time thing. We have one shot at this. We can't look back in 2023 and say, I wish we had really, no. It's got to be now. It's got to be here. It's got to be with you all. You all are out here on a Tuesday. This is Tuesday, right? It's August. I'm not totally sure my days of the week. You're out here on a Tuesday morning, and that means to me that you all care about this issue. You all are people who I call influencers, and you've got to use the influence that you have to make sure that you're fighting for a fair count, and that you're also making sure that the people who you influence, your friends, your family, people in your neighborhood, that you're using the influence that you have to make sure that when it comes time to be counted, that people are raising their hands, they're filling out those forms. Now, I'm not going to say that, the fate of the nation rests on your shoulders, but the fate of the nation rests on your shoulders. And that's not an exaggeration. If we let them do it the way that they want to do it, this country is going to look fundamentally different than it should, both in terms of who serves in Congress, where the money goes, what kinds of programs that we have in place. And so, not more, you could not have more that is at stake. And I'm confident that an energized citizenry like you all, who are engaged in this fight, who are willing to use the influence that you have, that we can make this count a successful one. Now, we have great people at the Census Bureau, and I want to make sure that everybody understands this. We have great civil servants at the Census Bureau who are doing a wonderful job, just as we have great people at the United States Department of Justice, where Portia and I used to work, who are doing a great job, in spite of the political leadership and what they are trying to do. And so they deserve our support as well. We have to give them the material that they need, the numbers that they need, so they can do the job in the way that they want to do it. So I look forward to the conversation we're going to have, the questions that we will respond to, but more than that, I look forward to seeing Michigan come in with a huge number of people who are counted, who have raised their hands, and try to make sure that that congressman is not lost, that that congressman doesn't end up in some other state, that Michigan gets its fair share of that $900 billion, and that facilities like this will be built in other parts of this area and other parts of the state with the appropriate federal assistance. A lot is at stake, but we can do this. We can do this. We should be optimistic about this. You know, the President of the United States doesn't want this to happen. The Commerce Secretary doesn't want this to happen. Wilbur Ross, they run the census. The Attorney General of the United States is not being supported. But you know what? We got to beat them. We got to beat them. And you know what? We can beat them. Because there's nothing more powerful than an engaged, focused American citizenry. Nothing more powerful than that. We, an engaged American citizenry, got women the right to vote. We celebrated that anniversary just yesterday. We ended a system of American apartheid in the civil rights movement. Those are the kinds of examples that we have to keep in mind when we think about this effort and think about how difficult this is going to be. Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. But you know, we're used to fights. We're used to doing hard things. We're used to doing difficult things. We're used to sacrificing. We're used to committing ourselves to one another and to a cause. And we have to have that kind of spirit with regard to the census. Something that ought to be routine. Something that we shouldn't have to fight for. But we have to fight for it. But we can do this. I'm optimistic that we'll do it, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you in this effort. It's now my pleasure to bring up Carrie Singh, who's going to talk about some of the, yeah, come on, give her a hand, who's going to talk about some of the details and give you a little more about what it is that you can do, what's at stake with regard to the census. But let's go out there and let's make sure that everybody gets counted.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carrie Singh, and I've been recently appointed by Governor Whitmer as the Executive Director of the State Census. And in that capacity, I'm hopefully gonna be doing a few things. I just started on August 5th. One is help mobilize state government as a resource and integrate into your local efforts, whether that's for question centers or kiosks where you can access the online form for the census, as well as working with a nonprofit association and their hubs around the state, as well as your amazing complete count committees by the city of Detroit and also the county of Wayne. So really just looking forward to the work moving forward. And this is my first event, and I get to do it with the Attorney General, Eric Holder, and this amazing panel that has made time today to talk about how the census is important to them. And as the moderator, I will do the best to keep the conversation moving, and then if we have some time at the end, we'll also do some questions from the audience, so feel free to take notes. Let's start with Victoria. You're a mom, a small business owner, and a community advocate. And the census affects a lot of different areas in your life that you see firsthand. I'd love to hear about how you see the census and the importance of the census impacting different aspects of your life.
Hi everyone, my name is Victoria. To answer your question directly, I think the Census is simple in that all I want is to be seen, to be validated, to be counted, for someone to know that I'm here. I think that all of the efforts that I'm doing as a mom, as a business owner, and out in the community, it would be a shame and a waste for it to just not to go unnoticed. And so to just be able to take that time to fill out the paper and to make sure that I notify the city, the state, the government that I'm here, I'm doing the work. We're all doing the work in our own communities. And so it means a lot to know that my efforts would not be discredited or, again, just go unnoticed.
I think Addison got a nice shot of an action shot there. Next question is for Mrs. Ackman. You serve as a superintendent of the Hamtramck schools. I come from a family of retired public educators, so I know that you are acutely aware of the impact the census has to education programs and in your community. And as you know, Michigan kids are one of the most undercounted communities on census efforts, especially kids under 5. I'd be interested to hear from you what a complete count means to your schools, and also some ideas on how to engage kids and families so we make sure we get a complete count.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just to walk you through some of our families. Allow me to walk you through some of the lives of our Hamtramck Public Schools. Can you hear me now? Okay. So allow me to walk you through the lives of some of the immigrant families at Hamtramck Public Schools. Just looking at one family in particular, you have children at home alone, and their father is doing the best that he can do. Their mother is stuck somewhere in Djibouti, awaiting to be allowed to come to the United States and join the family. What is happening? They are trying to survive. They are in survival mode. You look at some of our other residents in Hamtramck, you have people that are coming from just trying to deal with the struggles of everyday life, trying to survive, single parents, fighting poverty. And again, the same theme, they are trying to survive. So how does this impact their lives? We have to make it known to them the relevance of why this is important and how will it affect them. When it comes to school education, definitely it is going to affect our students. And a lot of our families that have a mistrust, when you look at the surveys that are out there, you look at the research that is out there, 50 to 60% of residents do not have trust in the local, state, and federal government. That's an issue. Why is that? Fear. Fear comes control. So we are trying to get the information out to our parents. We are trying to move them from being survivors to being empowered and being aware. The awareness is important. We have parent engagement community facilitators that are working with the families to, number one, educate and inform and help them make informed decisions. And number two, help them feel comfortable. So representation is key. If you want something, representation. People look like us, communities. Trust. So I'm not. Definitely, there is a lot of relevance and a lot of connection to the schools, to the school systems, to the education, and the groups that are underrepresented are in high poverty districts, communities. They are our African American population, our Asian population. They are our immigrant population. So, and also the uneducated. So we have to target the support for each individual community, making sure that they are heard, that they are validated. And again, knowledge is key, and knowledge is power.
Thank you. I love the passion, because we need to replicate your passion across the state to build awareness on the census. Next, Mr. Attorney General. Yeah, I'm passing the drinks down. So in this day and age, there's no doubt there's a lot of misinformation on a variety of issues, including the census. And I'm curious, as you travel the country and talk to grassroots leaders, how are you seeing them overcome and combat this misinformation campaigns on the census and other issues?
There's a lot of misinformation. Some of it is just general misinformation. People don't know about the census process or how important it is. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that is out there that has been put out there to generate fear and keep people away from the count. I was in Texas, I don't know, a few weeks ago, talking about this issue, and there's a real concern down there in the Hispanic community along the border about what this information will be used to do. And if this information is given to this administration, is that going to mean in a household that has mixed people, documented and undocumented people, is that going to put the undocumented people, at risk? And so we have to share with people information that is accurate, and how information is gathered from the census, how it is stored, who has access to it. Then we also have to make sure that that information that is gathered is used in appropriate ways and is not used inappropriately by this administration. But what you see is that you have people at the local level organizing amongst themselves, separate and apart from whatever is going on officially with regard to the federal government. Citizen groups, local governments, county governments, state governments, all getting involved in ways that they try to ensure that the count is fair, that it's accurate, that people feel comfortable in sharing information. And it is only through that kind of comprehensive effort that I think we're going to get anything close to a fair count. This is not one where we can simply say that we're going to let the federal government do it. But I think that again, Tuesday morning, you all are here. And it can't be that this is all that you do when it comes to the census, coming to this event, and taking pictures. That's all great. I'm seeing this cute little girl. That's all great. But the question is, for everybody here, what are you going to do when you leave? What are you going to do when you leave? What are you going to be doing 3 months from now? What are you going to be doing when the census is actually underway? And I think you have to be able to tell yourself, answer the question in the affirmative. This is what I did. This is what I convinced other people to do. We have a small business owner here. $900 billion in federal aid probably will help her small business in some form or fashion. $900 billion goes to infrastructure. Again, that helps small businesses. Larger businesses, locate on the basis of the census. They're trying to figure out where are our customers going to be, where are sufficient numbers of educated people, or the skills that we need, whatever. They look at the census forms. So this has impacts in so many different ways, just beyond the political. But I think, as I said, we have to organize, and people are organizing around the country. One of the things we're trying to do through our All on the Line effort is to make sure that we're looking at best practices around the country. What's good in Texas might not work in Michigan, but might slightly modified work in Michigan. What's going on in California, to make sure that the count there is fair. It might work in Florida. We're trying to come up, as I said, identifying best practices and then trying to modify those best practices, use them around the country, all, again, with a sense of fairness, to make sure that we are fulfilling our constitutional obligation to count all of the people.
Excellent, thank you. Melvin, You're up. There are certain communities that we've touched on that are particularly hard to count. And you have a unique perspective on this problem with your work with the Monterey for Love community group. Tell us about the community group and how we ensure hard to count communities are engaged.
Well, first of all, hello everyone, my name is Melvin. Mr. Trump has done a lot of work for you already, because a lot of them are tired, they're mad, and they're ready to make some changes. The One Love, Monterey One Love, is just a group of us men, and I say this word, men. We said, okay, we're just not going to have it. We're going to dig in, see the blood. That's why it's called Monterey Blood.
I'm going to try.
It's dead. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, y'all. That's why it's called Monterey for Love. We just decided that we were going to spread the love. We were going to get our lawnmowers out, and we were going to go cut the grass. We were going to go see if the seniors had anything to eat in their home. If they didn't, we were going to go get it for them. Just to show that we cared. Again, the half of the battle was done because our current, I don't know, he helped us out. He's helping it out a lot. I have guys that came to me because they call me the old man, and they say, "Oh man, what do we do to change?" Go get counted. Go vote. That's all I can tell you. So be ready for a lot of them coming, because they're coming, and they're not hard to reach. The way to reach them is this: make them feel they matter. Listen to what they have to say, because they have beautiful minds. They know what's right and what's wrong. All you got to do is talk to them. Build a bridge of trust. That's it.
Thank you, Melvin. Bishop Stargill. Leaders of faith like yourself and faith institutions play special roles in our communities. Please share your ideas on how the faith community can engage and help promote a complete count in the state.
Well, thank you for, first of all, inviting me to be here, Daniel Baxter. Appreciate you. Well, in the faith communities, as I was talking to the Wayne County executive before we got in, we are somewhat the last ones to be engaged in any process. We are the ones that are the cornerstones of the actual communities, but we are the rejected stones of the community. When it comes time to rally the troops, they call us at 11:59. They say 12 o'clock we got to be here. So what we need to do, as well as the grassroots organizations, is be on the front end. So like you said, the front line. The key is that we all have got to pull the wagon together. It was a saying that I learned this last weekend about Belgian workhorses. If you have one horse, it can actually pull 7,500 pounds. If you have two of them, they possibly can move 1,500 pounds. But if they're trained together from the get-go, they can almost carry 30,000 pounds. So it cannot be at the last minute that the faith-based community is engaged, because we are in the trenches, like myself, the different organizations, the National Action Network, the NAACP, the block clubs. All of us are on the ground in our own communities. Just like my sister did say, that we need people that look like us, that come from us, that knock on our doors. Our doors. That's a key. You know, just stats. Inkster, 1960, 39,000 people. 2017, 24,000 people. We have a decline. But some people are not being counted for the simple reason of their living arrangements. We have housing. They're one of the largest housing projects per square mile. Inkster's only 6 square miles. But we have the largest. But you might have your boyfriend or your girlfriend. So if I have them counted, you know, I may be put out. Or grandma and she's gotten common law marriage later on in life. They can't get married for the simple reason they lose some of their supplements. So again, it's a fear tactic that's been done by social groups and the government. But we need to, as I said earlier, we need to pull this weight together from the outcome. Train us now, Governor. Work with us now, Governor. Again, I always say this, as I come to Detroit all the time. I work with people in Detroit, and I'm from Wayne County, Western Wayne County. Key is, what we're gonna do, the question I always ask, what are you gonna do for Inkster, and what are you gonna do for Western Wayne County? It cannot be Detroit only. It cannot be Lansing only. It has got to be the whole state. And as in this great county that we have, it's got to be the whole county working together to make this happen for all the young people. See, young people only understand that these days is money. And as we say and teach them that this is the money, that if you are not counting, you're losing $1,600 to $1,800 per person. Pookie, you done lost your money. Baby mama, you done lost your money. Girlfriend, you done lost your money. So now we can't move forward. So we need to, as the faith-based community, to engage on the front end and be a part. And at the meetings, talking about as my man told me in Chicago last weekend, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And if you're on the menu, you're getting sliced and diced. Thank you.
Well, Bishop Stargill, I'd like to, maybe we can start doing a lot of events around the state, because I think that you hit on a number of points. And on the timeline piece, I just want to mention that in March is when you will be receiving mailings from the U.S. Census Bureau asking you to go online to fill out the census form. So we are in the public awareness phase. We are recruiting the horses and everyone and training the trainers, et cetera, to distribute this message around the state. So I just want to mention that. And then they count through July. Okay, so you have the response stage, self-response stage through April, and then I feel like I'm being quizzed, but no one's asking me a question. Self-response through April, and then the enumerators will be out knocking on doors for those that haven't responded. So just wanted to mention that timeline. And then I think we have one last question for the Attorney General. And today we have a number of folks that are going to be engaging in the real work of working with their community to ensure a complete count. And I would love your thoughts on, the actual work, the importance of, being focused in our outreach to get people to fill out the census.
Yeah, I mean, this is just consistent with what I think I've been saying all along, that I see this as really kind of part and parcel of the civil rights struggle. That's what this has become. Something that should be a routine governmental function has now become a part of the civil rights struggle. This is the way I think we have to view it, and this is the level of commitment I think that we have to give to it. There are mechanical kinds of things. One of the things I would say, these enumerators, these are jobs. And for people who want to be enumerators and actually be a part of this process, formally a part of the process, I'd say, apply for those jobs. And, we need people who look like the communities that they're going to be counting. Because we have certainly seen in things we did, in the Obama administration, that when you have people of color going into communities of color, you are going to get a greater response rate than if you don't have people who look like the communities where the count is supposed to be occurring. So I would urge people to, be a part of the enumeration process, of the counting process in a formal way. But again, getting back to this notion, this is part of the civil rights struggle. Dr. King said that the arc of the moral universe is long, and it bends towards justice. But it only bends towards justice, not on its own, but when people like you put their hands on that arc and pull it towards justice. Having a fair census count is pulling that arc towards justice. In terms of representation, at $900 billion, the kind of country that we'll have for at least a decade, and probably even more than that, because the foundation that we lay in 2020, 2021 will be one that not only endures for 10 years, but for 20 years, 30 years after that. If we don't do this right, we will allow people who are less committed to the ideals of this nation to define the kind of country that we are going to have. So the obligation is on all of us. You know, it's like President Obama always says, we can't wait for the cavalry to come. We are the cavalry, and you all are the cavalry. So, as I said, I would suggest that people apply for those jobs as enumerators, use the faith-based community to really engage people, organizations and people doing great things in the community, engage them in this process. We have a whole bunch of assets that we need to activate to be involved in making sure that we have a fair and accurate count. And again, I keep getting back to that word fair, because that's all I'm talking about. Fair. I'm not trying to get more than I'm entitled to, but I sure want to get what I am entitled to as an American citizen. I want to make sure that all the citizens around this country, who pay taxes, get the services that they are entitled to, get the representation that they are entitled to. And this is something, again, that we have the capacity to do if we work hard. If we understand it's not going to be easy, we're going to have to struggle through this, there are going to be obstacles we're going to have to overcome, there will probably be court decisions that we're going to have to fight, there are going to be efforts by this administration that we're going to have to overcome, but it's nothing. We've done this before. We've seen this picture before, whether it's, dogs on demonstrators, fire hoses on kids. We think we got it tough. Think what they had to do to be successful. And all I'm saying is we just have to have a fair census. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's not nearly as hard as the things that have already been done to get to the point where you had an African-American president, an African-American attorney general. We stand on the shoulders of those people, and we do a disservice to the sacrifices that they made if we do not understand, as I said, that this census count is the same part of that same struggle that they waged so successfully. This is about civil rights. This is about our country.
Thank you. We do have time for a question from the audience. So I see one hand in front of me. There's going to be a microphone coming over to you.
Hello, sir. My name is Sarah from the Detroit News. I'd like to ask you just something on redistricting. What do you think should happen after the Supreme Court ruled on the gerrymandering issue?
Yeah, well, let's start with the ruling by the court, 5-4. We keep seeing these 5-4 decisions. One of the worst decisions I think this court has made. It's consistent with what it's done with regard to our democracy. Citizens United, they said, all right, you can have all kinds of dark money go into the system, gutted the Voting Rights Act in the Shelby County case, and now in this one they say that there's no way in which the federal courts should be involved with regard to gerrymandering. Terrible decision. So it just means that we have to do the kinds of things we're doing at the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. We're filing lawsuits in the state courts. All right, we have a lawsuit in North Carolina now. It's going to really change the system in North Carolina, but we're bringing that in the state courts, as we successfully brought one in the state courts in Pennsylvania. So we'll use the state courts. We will fight for reform efforts like you had here in Michigan, where citizens, go and put through ballot initiatives, change the law that way. And through our All on the Line effort, we will advocate to make sure that when it comes to redistricting, this is not done the way it was done in 2011, where people, and this literally happened in Wisconsin. Let's say this is the floor of the state legislature. They went into a room, drew the maps, brought them outside, and said, here, vote on it. Through our All on the Line effort, through our advocacy effort, through people looking at the process, we'll make sure that there's a greater degree of transparency than happened in 2011. So through that reform effort, through filing lawsuits in the state system, through our advocacy efforts, I think ultimately we can be successful. And by supporting candidates who will stand for a fair redistricting process. One of the reasons why I spent so much time in Michigan in 2018 to get your great governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, people who will stand for a fair redistricting process. If we do all of those kinds of things, we can decrease the impact of that terrible Supreme Court decision.
Got one more. Madam Portia.
The boss.
So as a nonprofit, I'm very concerned. We did a launch of the census back in November? April, what month is it? April, right, I wasn't even here in November. But, you know, I know that people are hesitant to open their doors for people that they don't know, even with an ID tag, even with identification. So are there gonna be opportunities for people to come into places like Focus Hope or NSO to do their census application with people from the Census Bureau so that they don't feel that they have to necessarily open their doors to someone, especially our seniors who may need help with doing their census report online?
Yeah, a couple of things, and I don't know, Bridget, if you want to jump into, she's here with the U.S. Census Bureau, but we will be working with nonprofits and other, just as I'm working with state government, figuring out how we can support either kiosks or computers that are accessible, and then train folks that can help, you know, especially seniors, without, you know, they still have to fill out the form themselves, you know, so just to be clear there. So, you know, yes, we want to do that and do anything we can to support that outreach. Mel, you're bringing them? I love it. Thank you, Melvin. We got one more question. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. I just received a text. I have someone who's interested or has been called to work for the census. However, they have not contacted me or anyone else who is willing to help you work. So what is the timeline from the date of application to when people will actually be called in to be census workers?
Excellent question. I don't know, do we still have Jay here? Was it Jay? With the U.S. Census Bureau. I don't know that answer. The U.S. Census Bureau is staffing up, and I know that they have a goal of having, just to give you a perspective, oh, there we go. Do you know a timeline in terms of outreach when an applicant sends in their application? And
Right. We all need to hear
You got
this.
some vital information you're about to share with us.
Thank you so much. You can anticipate when your application is completely submitted in about a 4 to 8 week turnaround time. Anticipate that. It's all in conjunction with the campaign or the launches that the census will do. There are several, okay? So I always tell, when we get the calls at the ACO office, stand at the ready. If you completed your application, you completed completely, follow your emails, stand at the ready. We're going to need everybody's effort in this census process. Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, there may be other questions. All right, well, we've come to the conclusion of our program, and I first want to give a wonderful round of applause for our panel. Also, Focus Hope, Mayor Duggan's team that helps support this, County Executive Evans, and the leadership for the census in Southeast Michigan. And then, of course, Mr. Attorney General, thank you so much for coming to Michigan. Come back. This is public awareness, and we need you and all the support we can get.
Vote.
Thank you.
Vote 2020. I don't want to lose this state in 2020. Vote.